Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Whimsically Wicked, a reading duet. My name is Haley, and I am the whimsical half.
My name is Daria, and I am the wicked half.
We are here to talk about a series that has sold over 3 million copies, first two books, over 3 million copies since its release in 2023.
Really?
A series that all the girls, the guys, the gays, the theys, they know about, even the guys who camped out of Target to get their girlfriends a copy of the extended edition that the publisher decided to use stock photos from 2021 on.
Yeah, that's a whole thing.
They're also blaming Target for it.
Really?
They're blaming Target. All of TikTok is blaming Target for these stock photos, which are abysmal, don't get me wrong. But Red Tower Publishing, those are the ones to call out. It's the publisher. It's not.
Yeah, it's not Target to publish this
No, Target signed a deal to exclusively.
to make some cash.
Yeah, to exclusively sell it so that they could make some cash, but the publisher did it. It's not even Yaros's fault.
No, no.
This is the publishing company cutting corners. They're using stock images.
When there's so many amazing fan artists out there.
Yeah. Who love this series.
And do really pretty art for it.
Uh-huh. Other news, Daria and I also put makeup on for the first time in 2 months. Really exciting. I attempted eyeshadow that probably looks like a 6th grader did it because the last time I actually tried to put eyeshadow on was in 6th grade. So if it looks like I have a black eye, that's why. I was trying to fit the vibe.
I didn't even adventure into eyeshadow today. I put on eyeliner and mascara and was like, that's enough. That's all I got in me.
Work from home is a different ballgame.
Yeah, no one can call me out for not wearing makeup, so we're lucky if I'm wearing pants.
Yeah. But this book was so successful last week. Half of the people didn't even get their exclusive editions that they ordered.
Yeah, one of my poor friends, she got the sprayed edged one from Amazon and then got emailed that she wasn't gonna get it.
Yeah, devastating news. And it just kind of goes to show that, I don't know, this publishing company, I think that there's some issues with this publishing company. They've got a history of cutting corners. It sounds like the final draft, when it went to printing, was in like October, November, which is not enough.
That's crazy short amount of time. Knowing that this was gonna be this big of a book.
Not enough time to print all the copies, get them sent to everybody who wanted them. Not good. Not good in the grand scheme of things. This is a really popular series. If you somehow don't know what series we're talking about yet, we are talking about the release of Onyx Storm, the third book in the Empyrean series.
Imperium?
Imperium?
Imperium.
One of those. We've got Fourth Wing, we've got Iron Flame, and we've got Onyx Storm finally. You have your exclusive edition. You were one of the lucky ones if you're watching on YouTube.
Sure did. Got my dragon edges, which are
Beautiful.
very pretty. Don't get me wrong, this was worth ordering it in like December.
It is
last year.
gorgeous. That's not the Target exclusive one though, right? That one doesn't have stock images in it.
I haven't even opened it, I'm gonna be so honest.
That's it. Let's
It's-
look.
It's not the Target exclusive. There's a map in this version.
Oh my gosh, our Kindles didn't have a map.
Yeah, that was an absolute ripoff because I was so fucking confused. Okay, well, we're gonna have to consult that later.
Absolutely, we will.
There are no images
Okay.
inside of here. Is there anything on the dust jacket? No, that's a boring dust jacket. There's just another map on the back.
Okay, so you
Oh.
paid for sprayed edges.
I paid for sprayed edges.
I can respect that. But yeah, let's stop going after Target for something that the publishing company, Red Tower Publishing, they have a huge history of doing stuff like this where they cut corners to try and save money, make more money out of a book that's obviously going to do super well. And I think it's kind of devastating because it is a book you're going to make so much money off of this series regardless of what you do.
Yeah.
And when we talk about limited editions and things like that, those are people who are going to pay extra money for their favorite books and really cool images that are true to the characters and to the story. And I think that you need to have a really, like, as an author, let's talk about Rebecca Yarros. She needs to be really, really clear on the fact that her fandom is what is making her money. She needs to be doing some fan service in the way that she releases
Yeah,
her limited editions.
and advocacy there too. Like
Mm-hmm.
there are some phenomenal artists out there who do great fan art for Fourth Wing. That could always be included in there. Like I have a lot of, you actually can't really see all my limited editions, but there's a whole shelf up there that's like Arcane Society. I have some Midnight Bookshelf beside me. Those are all limited editions that are full of beautiful art by like people who do fan art.
Yeah. Yeah, so anyways, very disappointing in the publishing company. I will say most of the blame deserves to be on that. But I don't know, with a fandom this big, you really want to do them service. Like I've even seen a Court of Thorns and Roses limited editions that were the original covers just gray. And people are
Oh
going
yeah.
to buy them just to have more. And it's like that's not creative. You're just trying to get more money out of a fandom that cares a lot about your books. It's just
Yep. And there are beautiful options out there, but apparently publishers aren't paying for them.
no, they're not. Devastating. I've seen a lot of mixed reviews, but honestly, online, after whatever, we're less than a week of this being published, just over a week by the time we release this. Uh, I've seen overwhelming positive reviews on social media for this book.
Yeah, which is kind of funny because I must live in a microcosm that did not experience that. And I wonder if it's kind of like the disconnect of like my friends that read. Like we read hundreds of books in a year. And I wonder if that is more so like because this is a really easy series, a really easy book to pick up if you're like, "Oh, I'm just gonna casually read like 3 or 4 books this year."
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's the crowd of people who are super loving it, which totally fair. Like I, if this was what I was reading for the year and I only picked up like a couple series, this is a great one to do that with. It's so easy to follow
Totally.
if you're doing it all at once.
100%. And I think we do need to recognize that this series is not for us.
Yeah.
And for both of us, it's not for us in different ways. For me, I really gravitate towards character driven stories that really explore deep emotions, grief, loss, love, but like in just I sit with that for 100 pages and maybe a very short period of time goes, but I get to experience all of these emotions and really heavy events. And it's written in a very like prose type way. That's the kind of book I gravitate towards. And if I gravitate towards fantasy, I want it to be a high fantasy. I don't care so much about the romance focus, at least from the ones that I've read. And for you, to your point, you read so many books a year.
So many.
And I feel as though this is a really good book for someone, especially someone who's just starting to get back into reading.
Mm-hmm. It's like an
Or,
avatar.
yeah, and like it is kind of reality TV in a book in a way,
Yeah.
right?
Oh yeah.
The drama, the.
It's yeah, very drama. I think what I've been struggling with this one, and I'll say for the as this podcast has progressed, I am a very big mood reader, and I will just sink into deep dark holes, and my whole life will just be that one kind of book. And right now, that's Harry Potter fan fiction. It's still Harry Potter fan fiction. It's been since September.
September, I think. We had an intervention that didn't work
No,
even a little bit.
if anything, it prompted me to start writing Harry Potter fan fiction myself. So that's what I'll be doing this afternoon while we watch football. But my thing with that is like I I've read almost I get a round up like maybe one or two. I've read 100 fanfics in that time period, and they're not short ones by any means. Like I average probably about 150,000 words, which is 800 pages. This read more like fanfic than any of the fanfics I've read. One of them is literally called All the Cliches or something like that, and it still had less cliches than
Yeah.
this book did.
Yeah. We're gonna start this with some spoiler-free reviews of just kind of what we thought about the book and how the vibe and how the series has progressed. But I will say spoilers for Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. If you shouldn't even be watching this if you haven't read those two. So
Yeah.
spoilers right off the bat from Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, but we'll hold off on spoilers for Onyx Storm and we'll kind of just give you like vibes about what we felt, and then we'll move into spoilers right after and we'll let you know when that is. But yeah, I think Onyx Storm, my biggest problem with Onyx Storm is that it was very YA for me to a certain extent,
Without being
with
YA.
very much not being YA. And I was doing a little bit of research on why it felt this way. Because what you notice in a lot of YA, like fantasy or just YA books in general, is that there's very, very harsh themes. And when you look back on it as an adult, you actually kind of start to question, like, should kids be reading this? Like, I'm thinking, 13 Reasons Why,
Oh
where this
gosh.
girl, like, you know what I mean? Like, everyone knows what 13 Reasons Why is, but
Yeah.
that book, and Harry Potter, even, like, you read that first book that is a children's book, and the
Child
child abuse
abuse,
is insane. And so
the
we look,
manipulation.
yeah, I think Harry Potter is the best example of this. And you look at it, and as an adult, we say, that child is going to be so messed up in so many different
So
ways,
much therapy needs to happen.
which is why I think your Harry Potter fanfiction journey is so cool right now, because as an adult, you get to explore what would have actually happened
Yes.
if this was an actual thing.
Yeah, like how difficult would this actually be if you put a child through this and they hit like age 16 and realized this isn't normal?
And you get to watch all of these different things within a series that you've known since a kid, and actually watch it play out in a little bit more of a realistic scenario minus the fantasy part. But what YA generally does with these types of things is they make them super harsh. Even Fantasy of Frost was like this with the child abuse and things like that. They make them
Yeah.
super harsh, but what they do is lessen the impact on the character. So in Harry Potter, for example, really crazy abuse, and he had that obviously, but the
Consistently through the whole series.
but the impact of it is he was still a relatively normal kid who lived this normal life with a few problems and things like that. So what YA does is it lessens the impact on the character so that when kids read it, they just kind of see like, oh, this has just happened, and they moved on from it.
Yeah, it creates a really good defining line between good and evil and what is wrong and what is right, and it makes things black and white.
Yeah.
When in reality, we live in a world of gray.
Yeah. And I don't know that I feel super qualified to talk on whether that tool in YA and kids books is necessarily right or wrong, because
Yeah.
like lessening the impact of something really serious could, I'm not qualified to talk on that. But I do think we should talk about that tool being used in Onyx Storm, because this harshness of this world in actually the entire Fourth Wing, this was actually something that was started in Fourth Wing, the harshness of, you have to cross the parapet or you die. If you lose your rider, then, or if you lose your dragon, you die immediately. You have to go out into the field and get a dragon, if they see you as too weak, they'll just char you. This death situation and all of this trauma is used as this tool to show how harsh the world that she's created is.
Mm-hmm.
But she lessens the impact on the actual characters so that we don't feel how bad it is.
And it really lowers the stakes for everything. Like, you're like, all right, well, you're at least half of you are gonna have to die at some point. So like,
Yeah.
I'm just not gonna get invested.
And the fact that in 2 books, what, like one or two of them might have died?
I
Like main
Yeah.
characters, 2 of them died. You live in this super harsh world that everybody dies, and there's this high percentage of children, not, I guess they're
You
adults
read
at
their
this
names
point.
off every single morning.
But the main group of people don't
So consistent.
die. Like the stakes are low, right? And it also, as an adult, when we're reading these things, there's a disconnect, because we know that people don't react to that type of trauma in that way. When I was 6 years old and I was reading Harry Potter, I was like, yeah, maybe that's how kids react to that.
Yeah.
I haven't had this experience. Maybe this is just, kids are like more malleable and this is how they get through. And that is true to an extent. As an adult, I look at that and I say, no, that is fucked up.
Yeah. And it's
That's
not
not
like
how
you
you
can't
react.
have that in the book. You just need to have the emotional depth of your characters to process it in some way, shape, or form. Like, she kind of tries to do it by like acknowledging, she's like, wow, I should feel this way about this, but then like she doesn't.
Right.
But like, everything could hit so much better if they actually had repercussions for what happened to them. If like you had a really big fear of heights after going across the parapet and you had to get over that because now you have to be a dragon flyer and you're like panic attacks or anything that is any form of emotional backlash from their experiences would just add so much depth to the story.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I think that the overarching problem of it is that as time went on, I enjoyed Fourth Wing. I think I gave it
I
a
like Fourth
three and
Wing.
a half out of 5 stars, and that is acknowledging that this series is not for me. I enjoyed it. We both enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think I gave Fourth Wing 4.5 to 5 stars. I
Oh
can't
yeah,
remember.
you really liked it,
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
and I had fun, which is not super common for it. But it over time started to try to do way too much in this like period of time, which made the books longer than they needed to.
Yes.
And it really dampened the focus on the characters and the relationships, which I personally think in romantasy, this genre, is the most important part of it.
Yeah, I feel like it needed to pick a lane
Mm-hmm.
where romantasy, in my opinion and my experience, which again, I read hundreds of books in a year and a good chunk of them are romantasy, is you focus on the romance and your world building is light. You pick something pretty basic so you can really build out characters
Yeah.
and their relationships with each other and their experiences and like why they need each other. Why should I be invested in the fact these people fell in love? Like, why do I care?
Mm-hmm.
Versus like high fantasy where you focus on your world building and your politics and you have a lot of stuff going on, but like your character relationships can be a lot lighter and like more manipulative and things like that so that you can have it. Whereas this is like trying to do both of those at the same time and can't do either of them well.
And smut on top of that, right?
Yeah, and I think like if this was a book that was written as YA, she dropped the smut, you could still have a romantic relationship. Like we've all freaking City of Glass exists.
Exactly.
That's fine. But I don't need there to be that much smut, which like there barely was any in this book either, which I was confusing
Yep.
because of the dirty talk all the time, which was
Yep.
so annoying, and I have a whole rant about that later. But like I think this would have been better as a true YA book.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I think that us as adults still would have loved it just as much, but smut was the selling point for the adults, right? It's what
Yeah.
got them into the fantasy genre, but you really, really just needed to cool it a little bit on the world building.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's been a lot of criticisms with Yaros and how she basically, because she used a lot of Gaelic names, and I will also start this video by saying I'm not going to be able to pronounce any of these right, and I'm very sorry, but we're not the authors, and the authors can't even pronounce them right, so we get a pass. But like the fact that she didn't really do as much research as she needed to in order to create this big series. She tried to do the world building, the characters, the romance. She had a huge cast that was a little bit in over her head. And I'll be honest, it had its moments for me in where I felt potential. I was like, "Ooh, if you run with that, if you run with
Yeah.
this feels good to me." But if you just cut out the 500 pages of filler that was in this book, because there was a decision to make this a 5-book series instead of a trilogy.
It would have performed so well as a trilogy because you need things to happen. And I was so lost for the first I think I messaged some I was 60%. The first 60% of this book, I had no idea what was happening, who anybody was, or where we were going. And I quite frankly don't think I should have to reread an entire series to be able to follow the next book. Like there should be something in there or like I don't want to have to reread 2 books to read the third one.
And I should be able, for a romantasy series, like if we're talking about this being an easy read, and I'm not judging anybody for like what you like to consume. These are really fun types of books
Yeah.
that they have, like even for me, they have their place. But if you are reading a romantasy series for the smut, for the fun world building, for the fiction, for the vibes, for the drama, I should be able to watch a recap video in under 45 minutes for both of these books.
Yeah.
There was like one of the creators that I follow on YouTube um created a 4-hour recap of just Fourth Wing, and when I was watching it for like to prepare to read this, I was like, too much, too much. This should have been able to be done in a quarter of this time.
Yeah, an hour. quick summary. I need to know who the characters are, where they are, what they did, why I care.
What happened? What are the motivations? Those types of things. And for most of Onyx Storm, to be honest, I didn't really understand what our goal was. I didn't really understand who who everybody's motivations were. I didn't find that the motivations of most of the characters were super believable. And my biggest problem with the book was the amount of plot armor that was just everywhere.
Yeah, I think that was one we talked about a lot, and we talked about it early on too, because I was like, there are no rules in this book. There are no things that are universally true that I can sit down and be anchored in the story and be like, no matter what happens, this is what has to be. And it kept happening where they were like, oh, like this is what it's like, and then 2 minutes later they're like, actually, we just discovered this. And I'm like, okay, but now there's no challenges. Like you just get from one step to the next and you don't have to put any work in or get creative or think harder.
Part of me thinks she was rushed. There was a deadline on this book.
These have been released too close together
Cuz
across the board.
what, she signed a deal for probably 3 books. I'm talking out of my butt. I don't have references for that, but I know it was supposed to be a trilogy. So my guess is that there was a deal for 3 books and she had a deadline for each of them. And this one had it because the planning that went into it, it literally felt like she was writing as she went, and she had kind of ideas of plot, like, okay, we're gonna go here and then this has to happen, so I'm just gonna create rules, but oh, I forgot that they're just gonna go over here, but that rule still exists, so now I have to find a way to get rid of that rule so this plot point can happen. It felt like that the whole book. It felt like there was a really big lack of planning.
Yeah. Lack of planning, lack of time. Because I can, again, I'm trying to write fanfic right now, and I spend like, sometimes I sit down and I get to a point and I'm like, I need a week to figure out how I'm going to make this happen within the rules of my world. Like, how do I make this make sense? How do I make it so that, like, Dumbledore does not know or can't get back to his office because the wards have been triggered, so I can have someone break into it? And I spent like 2 weeks trying to figure out how to do that.
Yeah. I think she needs a new editor. I think she needs someone who's gonna tell her.
That this doesn't work.
Yeah.
Same problem SJM has. Or yeah, you just
Yes.
need someone to sit down and be like, no, this
But
doesn't make sense.
but people are saying that this is the best book in the series. I'm trying to wrap my head around, like, is it just for the vibes?
It might be, which is totally fine. Don't get me wrong. If I was in the right mood for this right now, which I
Yeah,
am not,
we weren't.
I pushed through real hard.
We were up till 1 a.m. last night, and let me tell you right now, 1 a.m. not for me. I was in such a bad mood by the end of it, and I hate 1 a.m.
Yeah,
I hate anything past 10 p.m. So
I routinely stay up till 4 a.m. in the morning
yeah, you're insane.
and then crawl myself to work because I have no responsibilities outside of just doing my job. But like, even staying up till 1, because I also slept for 3 hours the night before because I was reading fanfic. It was painful. It was so hard. Like I was listening at
you
3.6
you were like
speed.
on the couch
Yeah.
the whole night. I looked over and she was just like,
Yeah. I looked like I wanted to die. It sucked. I was listening at like 3.6 speed by the end. I was like,
yeah,
just make it faster. I don't know, just make it end.
what I will say is, for the amount of filler that was in this book, she does know how to write an ending.
She has a really good idea.
The action scenes, the like twists and turns, she knows when to create a twist and turn. She knows how to do a cliffhanger. So I actually did really enjoy that, because the whole book I was like, I don't want to read the 4th one. I'm not doing this again. I'm not doing this again. And then it ends and I'm like,
Well, now
I
need to read the
kind of
fourth
want to know
one.
what happens. So there is this level of investment in the story.
Yeah. Well, the same thing happened with book 2 with you. I remember you texting me being like, I'm not finishing this. And I was like, you have to finish it because the end means you have to read the next one.
I know, and it is kind of infuriating because 80%, 85%, maybe even 90, I had a terrible time.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, but you have bones of this concept in this story that is really, really cool, and the execution is just so poor, but no one's ever gonna do it like this again, and I think that's the most disappointing part for me.
I need to find some good fanfic for this.
Yeah, we're
Personally.
we're gonna talk about this because there are some points in the book that both of
Yeah.
us were like, our fanfic brains were going off like,
Yeah.
oh, this could be better.
Yeah. What if we did this with it instead?
Yeah. You want to get into spoilers?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, we're gonna split this up into a couple of different sections so that we can kind of keep ourselves somewhat organized, but who knows how this is gonna go. Let's start with the characters.
Yes.
Do you have a favorite character?
I would die for Riddick.
Riddick's a good character. I will give
Riddick
you that.
carried the story on his shoulders. In my opinion, I love him.
He actually, I think he was the only character in this book that actually got a lot more depth.
Depth, growth. Like, he's the Joker slutty boy, which I love. There's a reason why he's my favorite character. Those are always my favorite characters. I love the comic relief.
Yeah.
That's just gonna, like, pop in there and be like, this is the chaos we're introducing now. Excellent. But he actually sat down, and when he, like, when he found out about Violet and Zayden keeping the whole Venom thing a secret, and he was like, no, like, we need to talk. He's the only person who had a normal reaction to any of this.
I know. And in the first two books, he was there for comedic relief. And in this book, you saw people continue to treat him that way, like in comedic relief, with like, oh, you're not going to do anything. You're just here for the vibes. You're not coming on this quest. What did he call it? A quest squad or whatever?
Yeah.
Like they were like, you're not doing this. You're the funny guy of this. And he was like, no, I'm here to play. And then he comes on the quest. He finds out that Zayden has been a Venin this whole time, and he is probably the only person who actually talks to Violet with like some
Sternness.
yeah, and she actually finds a way to listen to him.
Yeah.
Which in my brain actually makes sense because he doesn't talk serious most of the time. So if he's actually going to flip the switch, you better fucking listen to him.
Yeah.
And he goes, no, do you realize that you're putting everybody that you love in danger right now? And when she was like, I know, but like this, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, what's the line?
Yes.
That was so good. What's the line? And she's like, there's a line. And he's like, you tell me what the line is, or I'm gonna just spill the whole secret. I'm gonna tell everybody because if you can't give me a line, you aren't gonna be able to do something about this when he gets too far and he becomes too evil. And like it's going to become a problem, so you tell me what the line is. And then she actually, like, I saw Violet grow, and him helping Violet actually grow a little bit was well overdue because she hasn't in 2.5 books.
Not even a little bit.
Riddick did a very good job this book. There was a lot of good character growth there.
And then he just kind of disappeared for that second or third act, which was really disappointing.
Yeah.
Because I was really enjoying his presence.
Yeah.
And then he was just gone.
Yeah. My favorite character out of all of the books is Taryn, the dragon. Yeah. I think what Taryn adds to the book is this really cool relationship and sense of reason. That actually is probably my favorite relationship in the book between him and Violet being one of my least favorite characters, because Taryn represents this very like stern, absolute force that he's like sarcastic, he's witty, he's dry, but he also has this, like, he kind of reminds me of a dad who never wanted the dog, and then they got a dog, and now he's obsessed with the dog, and they're best friends.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he never wanted it, blah blah blah. But he got this bond with Violet, and now he's stubbornly protective of her, and it creates this relationship to me that I actually think added depth to the series, and that's the relationship that's kept me coming back.
Which was kind of sad in this book, personally, because I feel like we didn't get enough.
We didn't.
Dragon for a Dragon Rider book. I got a lot of people. I got a lot of really, really stupid people.
And a lot of dragon names that I didn't remember.
There are so many names I don't remember at all.
Yeah, so do you want to talk about the cast really quickly?
Yeah.
This cast was big.
It's too big.
Too big.
Like, there's a reason why when you read some of the biggest, most successful fantasy books of all time, they're built around quads as like a maximum. You got four people. You you don't go past a reasonable number because you can't keep track of that many, and you can't give them all what they deserve as far as growth and understanding. Like Quinn forgot she existed until the last 10 pages of this book, and I was like, "Oh, who are you?"
I know, and that was actually one of the moments, like Imogen and Quinn, that moment for me, I was like kind of getting choked up a little bit. I
Yeah,
was
it
like,
was well written.
this is so sweet. Who the fuck is Quinn?
It's like, why do I care about Quinn? I had to go to the front of the book. I was like, okay, you're one of the riders in the squad. And then I searched her name, and it's only mentioned like 56 times in this 800 plus page book.
I know.
And really sporadically, too. It was like chapter 4, 15, 24, 65. And I was like, oh.
Well, and it's really hard because even 56, like, even if that's a lot, it doesn't really matter because she inputted characters in a way that it was just in groups. So it would be like, and then I saw Kai, Baylor, Quinn, Sloane, and Riddick all walk down the stairs. And then in the next chapter, it was like, and then 5 other characters walked down the stairs, and then 7 other characters walked down the stairs. I'm like, you didn't need to name them all, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
In my brain, I have no references for this, but in my brain, there are 4 tiers of characters in a book, like that kind of matter. The first tier is your main characters, the ones who you develop, you understand their motivations. Usually you're in your head if this is first person, or you're in their head if it's third person, even depending on like how they're writing it. But you understand their motivations, you understand their backstory, you understand like all of the trauma that they've dealt with and all of their growth. Like those are your main characters. That's like Xaden and Violet in this. Then you have your second tier, who you also get a decent amount of character development. Maybe you're just not in their head as much, but you at least understand, like, maybe they have a really big relationship with the main character and they, discuss like in depth about their childhood and their motivations, and you at least understand what they're doing. Then you have the third, where you understand a little bit less about their motivations, but you understand their purpose in the story, and you understand like whose side they're on, and like what they're doing. And then you have the fourth tier characters who you just kind of like know because they're there.
Yeah, they're the extras in the background of the TV show where like, yeah, they're recurring, but like they just move the plot along.
Every single character in this book was a tier down of where they're supposed to be. Violet and Xaden were very one-dimensional. They were second tier characters in my opinion.
Yep.
Violet is this stubborn, small, dainty, weak girl who's always being mentioned that she's small and dainty and weak and stubborn and defiant.
Yep.
That doesn't change. Xaden just loves Violet. Period.
Yeah, and like I could see where she was like trying to add in some responsibility at the end there, but like at the end of the day, it was like too little, too late.
Too little, too late. You got to be doing that in the first book. They should be going through an arc in the first book. They didn't, other than the fact that they got together.
Yeah,
and that could be discussed in a little bit. But so that's where I had a lot of problems, because then it's like I don't remember any of the characters.
No.
I don't care about any of the characters, and when they have their moments, like was it Trigger that died with the arrow in his throat when they went to that aisle?
Yeah, I had to look up who that was too.
I was like, I don't.
Which I think it was a Griffin Rider.
Yeah, like bummer, but also I don't care.
Yeah, fodder.
I don't know who this is.
Now, if you'd taken out Riddick, I might have cried.
Yeah, me too.
I would have. That moment would have made me upset.
Yeah, but like I
don't give a shit about this Griffin Rider we met last book, and you've talked about twice going into this.
I feel more connected to Riddick as a character than I do about Violet and Xaden.
Yeah, because he's got like a personality.
Yeah,
depth to it and understanding, and he like adds something to the story that's really valuable and I appreciate. Instead of, oh, I love you, but you keep lying to me, which they did less in this one. Thank God.
Yeah.
Because if I had to read another book of Xaden and Violet complaining about their secrets and how much they love each other, I might have thrown it across the room.
Yeah. And then, like, oh my god, the character motivations from the leadership of Navarre is insane to me. you need to have like this much sense of urgency. Your wards are going to be down in 6 months. The
Care.
Venin are coming, and your priority is embarrassing your cadets who are like 22, 23 years old, just coming out of school, and they're like, you disobeyed us, you can just like go do other stuff that doesn't actually help our, like, have a sense of urgency, shit's happening.
Yeah, I could not at the beginning. I was like, why do I care? They don't.
Mm-hmm. And this kind of contributes to my like YA theme, like General Atos, for example. He's just serves as this asshole, like just very absolute asshole.
Yeah.
In adult books, you have a little bit of that, but most of the time you create a character who has a little bit more depth. Like you give them like a little inch of sympathy, or you give them a little bit of depth of like, why is he so angry? Why does he hate cadets so much? Why is he so mad that Violet Sorrengail isn't like adhering to what he feels? Why is he such a stickler for these rules? Like, give us a reason for it, because him just being angry all the time.
It didn't really add anything. It just added a bit of adversity for them.
And plot armor!
Yeah. Which it was annoying. And at the end of the day, nothing he said even mattered because they just like none of those rules mattered.
Yeah. They're
Violet
like,
and
well,
him.
okay, so Violet needs to go to an outpost to see this one situation and have a dream of some sort. So, okay, how are we going to get her there? So, maybe Violet does something against the leadership's wishes again, and she gets caught. And then General Atos, who has a commanding force over her, maybe he can get really angry for absolutely no reason and send her out to that outpost. And now I have no problems. It's like he's literally just there to serve what you need.
Yeah, like we were based on the end of the book willing to kill off tens of thousands of people in one shots. There had to have been a better way to get them there than for General Atos just to act as plot points.
Um, I think the reason that Violet pisses me off so much, so I think it was like the second or third chapter in this book where uh the Venin had infiltrated the wards in some capacity, right? And they
Yeah.
just had found out. At the very beginning of the chapter, she goes, no one dies today. And I literally wrote in my notes, I was like, either this is foreshadowing and someone's going to die today, um, or this is just like to show that she is super stubborn and she wants to save everybody. Ultimately, a bunch of people died during that. It's none of the main characters, shit, because Yaros won't kill any of the main characters, but a
Yeah.
bunch of people in the actual like military school or whatever died. And another situation where like she didn't care. She just was like, oh no.
Time to go see Jack.
But like, how does you have no integrity of your character, because your character is like, no one dies today. I'm gonna save them all. I'm gonna be this hero. Blah blah blah. And then she's not, and
Mm-hmm.
then she doesn't care that she's not.
Yeah.
So then your character has no integrity. There's no sadness. She was like also pushing down the grief of her mother at the time. She's like, I'm not going to think about this. I'm not going to think about that. That was never revisited.
Yeah, they like all three of those siblings don't process that at all at any point.
No, but like there was this point where she was like, okay, I need to process these feelings of my mother. I'm going to grieve. I'm going to grieve. I'm going to grieve. At some point, I'm just pushing it down, pushing it down. And then it's like, now it no longer exists. Now
Yeah.
I'm not grieving. I don't care. I've gotten over it. There's no integrity and follow through because she was trying to do way too much with the book. She didn't have time to do it. This was already 800 pages. It was 400 pages longer than it needed to be.
Yeah.
And like she still somehow couldn't find time to put that in.
Yeah, like I wanted an explosion of some kind. I wanted her like her magic could have rebounded on her, caused her to have like a huge panic attack and destroy something or hurt someone because she like didn't process her emotions, and then bam, lightning storm.
Yeah.
Wham wham wham. Someone dies, someone
Yeah.
gets hurt. I don't care. Like repercussions, because there needs to be repercussions for things.
So yeah, exactly. When you have no integrity of your character, then what her character becomes is in love and attracted to Zayden. That's literally it.
Yeah.
She's like the
I
I
don't
don't
even know which kingdom she wants to save. If she wants to save all of them, if they don't care, like and they were like, oh, and then like 3 weeks later we did this thing, and I was like, why did you wait 3 weeks?
She's
Like, fuck the command structure. They clearly suck. Just go deal with the problem.
she's completely unwilling to work with anybody, including Zayden. We'll go into that after, but like she's completely unwilling to work with anybody, whether that's leadership. It's barely her own squad. Um, it's not Zayden. Like she's not willing to work with anybody. We don't actually know what she's trying to do other than like just like disobey, which again is fine. Like this leadership structure sucks, but what is your goal with this situation? You have none. You have no integrity, and so now it's like her whole inner thoughts is just, I miss Zayden. God, he looks so hot. God, I wish he was like with me right now. God, I would do anything for him. um and and so we've talked about this too. The first person was really problematic
Oh
because
yeah,
of
I hated
that.
it. I've only been reading Harry Potter fanfic, and it is exclusively in third person. So jumping into something in first person was super jarring. And I usually like my romance in first person because you get to be more intimate with the characters and really experience their relationships through their
Mm-hmm.
perspectives. But there wasn't any relationship to experience here. And I've written this review before for the Coven series by Harper L. Woods, where I was like, stop fucking and deal with the problem.
Oh my god.
Because every Zayden just like appears in this classroom and you're having this horrible experience and you're like, oh, he's just so gorgeous.
Yeah.
Every time.
Every time.
Every time he walks into a room, she's like, and he's so attractive. And I was like, that person over there is like presently dying. So can we deal with that?
I know.
But
I
no.
know. Well, yeah, and we don't have time to talk about all of the characters, but I think that the most problematic one was two biggest problematic situations in this book. A, cast was too big and you had no time to uphold any integrity of any of your characters or develop any of your characters' motivations, and they were all just like doing what they needed to do for the story. And two, Violet, the main character, had no integrity and no accountability, and
Yeah.
that being in first person, I prefer third person every single time. And I prefer multiple POVs with my fantasy. You are maybe a little bit different with that. I'm good with 6, 7 POVs. You like less.
I like less. I like it when we stick to like 2 to 4, I feel like
Yeah.
is my happy place because I can keep track of them really easy.
I'm good. You give me as many POVs as you need, but I like third person. Just I think that the characters get developed better, and like I had this problem with Akatar being in Feyre's head for
Feyre's head is insufferable.
4 books was terrible. Um, and you just don't get the same, especially with romantasy, because all they're thinking about is sex. Um, but yeah, speaking of sex, relationships. Xaden and Violet. What do you think of Xaden and Violet?
I just want so much more out of their relationship than sex, which is all I currently got.
I
'Cause
don't think that they like each other.
I don't think they like each other either, and it's so built on lust and toxic, not healthy emotions. Like there's no trust, really. Like she's like, oh, he's never gonna kill me, which like sure, but like you've got no proof of that.
Xaden's whole personality in this book was jealousy for Violet.
Yeah. Which again, totally fair emotion to have your character have. I just need more than just that one.
Yeah, it needs to be more, and it needs to serve as a like, I'm jealous because this person is getting something from you that I am not, or something like that.
Yeah,
Like
or
there
you're
needs to
giving
be,
him something.
yeah, or like maybe even Violet is being like shady or something for a little bit, and she makes some mistakes, and then Xaden is rightfully jealous. Like her ex-boyfriend showing up and them having like a little spat, and then Xaden almost like killing him or just like eyeing him from the side. It's like, this is just a lot.
Yeah. Not to mention, I was so confused when they brought that in, where they're like, well, I caught you like fucking this professor, and I was like, who is this person? Where did he come from?
I had to go back into Iron Flame and be like, okay, who's Halden? Okay, he's a prince. I was like, did they date? Do we know? And then I had to go on Reddit to look at like theories and stuff and find out that they never explicitly said that her and Halden had dated, and this was a new finding.
Information.
But I think the issue, that's great. The issue is that I'm not going back to reading all of these books. I don't really know what's like what's been really established versus what hasn't, and she did a really bad job at the beginning of Onyx Storm of recapping what happened. And
Yeah, but just jumped in.
you like you know that you do that in series, right? Like you're at the beginning of a book, don't make it weird, but just say like when Zayden became Venin and this happened, then you continue on with the story. Like you give us little tidbits of, hey, do you remember this happening? She
It was
didn't
like a
do any
quick,
of that.
just like a quick thing to trigger the memories
Yeah.
of this book that I haven't read in almost a year,
Yeah.
over a year. Like I just need a little something, something.
So anyway, so when Halden came out, we're like, okay, first of all, we're trying to remember who this person is because it's really hard to remember 500 characters. And then we're also trying to remember exactly what they told us in this
About him.
700-page book that was also kind of mid. And it was just like it was really
And
messy.
that kept happening to me where I'd be like, is this information I should know? Because the other thing where this came up, and I'm derailing us from the characters for a second, because this was so jarring for me too, was like, oh, the high up Venons have signets. And I was like, okay, cool. Just lost that rule that we had before now to push something along that I don't understand yet, which is
Mm-hmm.
fine. But like, one of those things that used to be set in stone is no longer set in stone, so my worldview is changing, and I need a new thing that's absolutely true instead, which I didn't get.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they were like, and you have like at the end they were like, oh, and then they have like counterpart signets, and like if this one exists on our side, it also exists on their side. And I was like, when was this established? When did we
When
talk
I
about this
needed it
lore?
to, when she needed it
Like,
to.
what do you mean you have a counterpart? Because I
Lack
know
of
like
planning. Lack of planning.
they did mention it like really briefly when that other kid had the shadows start, and he was like,
Yes.
oh, he's my counterpart, and I was like, what is a counterpart? And then I was like, okay, whatever, I'll just ignore it and keep going.
Yep.
And then it got to the end there, and she's like, well, T names person who I'm not going to remember how to say, badass chick with the other gray hair, is my mom's counterpart, not mine. And I was like, and this is a
What?
point from Danielle that she sent me at like 2 a.m. in the morning, which was like 4 a.m. in the morning for her because she lives on the East Coast. And she's like, wouldn't her mom technically be a lightning wielder if she can control storms? Why is Violet so important as a lightning wielder if she could only control lightning, but her mom could control like wind and tornadoes and lightning and rain?
We're unclear on what can be controlled. We have no idea. And that's it's so weird. Yeah, we'll talk about that in like the world building part of it, but it's ugh,
There was just so many things thrown at me,
so many
like
things.
people, concepts, rules, that I was like, but there's no grounding for this. I don't understand like why this person's here, why I care they're here, why this
Yeah.
rule just changed, where this rule came from. It just kept happening, and I was like, I can't keep track of this. And this is
No. And this is a this is a romantasy. I want what I actually really feel like I haven't found in the romance fantasies that I've read that I'd really like to be explored is you have this world ending situation or like world compromising issue, whatever that looks like. In a romance novel, I think it would be really cool if you had the two heroes who are supposed to be saving the day and like they're also the two um like couple or whatever. Uh the struggling to find the balance of we love each other and we prioritize each other and we do whatever we can for each other, but also we have so much more responsibility to save the world. And how do we balance out which one is more important? When do I sacrifice the love of my life for the good of the people? When do I sacrifice the good of the people for my own happiness? And I think this is a weird one to talk about. Spider-Man does a really good job of this.
oh
Like
okay,
the
yeah.
Tom Holland version of Spider-Man does a really good job. Even Andrew Garfield, like those, like the Spider-Man movies do a really good job of this. I think ACOTAR had hints of it. I think Throne of Glass did a really good job of something like that. But in my romance fantasy, I want this longing of like, oh, I want to save this man or I want to prioritize this man, but I have to go and do something else because the world is depending on me. And in Fourth Wing, you have these two powerful, arguably, characters, Violet and Xaden, who prioritize the world and whatever their goal is when they need to prioritize the world, and they prioritize each other in the other scenarios where they want to prioritize each other and it's contradicting. Like, whenever Xaden is asked, like, who do you fight for? He's like, Violet. And it's like, okay, so are you fighting for the world? Are you fighting for the good of the people? Are you fighting for the freedom of Tyrendor or whatever it's called? Or are you fighting for Violet? And it's like, oh, when somebody asks me, it's always Violet because that's romantic. But then when it comes down to it, he's trying to fight for the people.
Yeah, because at
Those are
the end, he gives up everything for the people.
Yeah, but also for
But
Violet?
also for Violet?
Because Violet's also keeping. But there's no internal battle between either of them of like,
Yeah.
can I save Xaden? Can I save the people? Like, Violet's literally like the whole book. I will save Xaden over anything. Like, I think both of them at some point had said that they would burn down the whole world for each other.
Do it.
Right? Right. But that's the thing. Like, there's no clear. What are your priorities? Because you can't have both, and she's trying to make them both.
Yeah. Which, like, don't get me wrong. Go for Xaden. Like, burn the world down. That is my bread and butter of love.
Commit to it, though.
Yeah. Go dark. Go venom together. Win. Your love gets to survive.
Yeah. You can't do both.
You can't do both.
You can't do both. And she's trying to do both, which makes it really, like, unclear motivations. I don't know what the goal is. I don't know who you're trying to save, what you're trying to save, and, like, whatever. And the part that actually gave me some hope for it was the relationship between Andarna and the rest of the Irids.
I know.
So that chapter, I think it was like chapter 45 and 46 or something like that. It was where Andarna meets her family and where Riddick reams out Violet. Those are the two chapters I was like, oh my god, it's
those are my favorite chapters in the whole book.
I think it was 44 and 45 or
I think it was 44 and 45.
Something like that. And so when Andarna meets the Irids are a totally different species than we thought that they were. And they actually try to promote peace.
Yeah, they're pacifists.
And they sent Andarna to the Imperium. I'm going to say that wrong every time.
No, that was right.
Okay. To basically test out the humans to see if they were ready to stop being
vicious, violent creatures and start working towards peace and understanding.
And ultimately, Violet used this adolescent dragon for her gifts, and they all suck, and they all use, like, they wield their magic and all of these things. They failed the test. They're terrible people who use whatever they can to gain power, and that is human nature, which I thought was an excellent theme to explore.
Yes.
Right?
The Reaper, and, like, make them sit there and think about, what are we doing? Is this the right choice? Like, should we even be fighting this fight? What is the alternative?
And I was like, let's explore that. Let's talk about
I was like, this is the turning point. This is why everyone loves this
Violet,
book.
Look internally. Is that actually what you want? Are you thinking about this? And then they're like, no, I just did what she gave it to me. She did this and she got defensive, and then they never talked about it again.
Yeah, no one continued to be like, is there another option?
Yeah.
Is there somewhere, some other way we could do this?
Yeah.
No, instead we just, like, moved past it. And I was so sad because I was like, this is it. And then, like, Riddick was sitting down with Violet, and I was like, this is the moment.
Yeah.
And then nothing. So I stand by the dragon's idea of burn it all down, start over.
Yeah, okay. And so let's kind of going back to the characters slash plot. I don't know where we're at right now. Violet's character arc has so much potential to go a different way. And I think there was 3 or 4. So the first time that I thought about this was when Thea, basically her mom's counterpart in the Venom.
Yeah.
With the silver hair and whatnot. She shows up and she's like, come to me. We want, like, whatever. She's like, come to me. Eventually you'll be here.
Yeah, we'll teach you. We'll train you. Like, there's something here for you.
Yeah. I wrote a note in my Kindle immediately. I was like, fanfic girlies, start writing Violet's anti-hero villain arc right now.
Yeah.
Go over there, see what's happening, right? And then, like, I'm thinking about this. Then, like, these Irids could also go over there, and they're like, okay, let's blow it up. These humans don't deserve what they've been given. Can we, like, pull them out of this? Can we get involved? And maybe Violet and Xaden go the route of, you know, the Irids are trying to stay out of it, and they're just trying to, like, go back to their home until the humans can figure it out themselves. Maybe Violet and Xaden want to do something about it. And now you have these 3 opposing forces where there's the humans who are, like, you know, just causing chaos and
warmongering and, like, not
Mhm.
asking questions. Like, I think the Griffin Riders and that whole society is the biggest point of, like, they were at war with them for however long and didn't ask a single question as to why. And then
Yeah.
they realized, oh, you're suffering.
Yeah. And then you have Zayden and Violet who are like actual venom now and they're power hungry, but they're also trying to go against the humans who are also doing terrible things. And so you have these conflicting like thoughts about them and how they're going about it, and they're also doing terrible things. And then you have this like force of good in the Irid side of things, but they're also being complacent in the whole situation. That sounds cool.
Yeah. And
And
it's all
it's
there.
it's freaking simple.
Yeah.
Because then you can still have the romance. You can still have this like Violet feeling, oh, but there are still people I love on the human side that I want to save and I want to convince. And like there's these relationships that you can still explore. But it's simple enough that you just have these three opposing forces and you're exploring these other things where right now you're just like, I'm going to all these continents. I need to find these things that my dad left, and I don't know. It was I think so. Anyways, that was the first time I was like Violet character like a villain arc. The second one was when and this really pissed me off. They were at one of the aisles. Can't remember which one because there was like 12 of them, um, and they got into it was the one with the Panthers and
Oh,
Cortland.
yeah, the first one.
The first one.
Started with like a D, I think.
Yeah. And they go there and they try to have negotiations. Halden's an idiot. He gets himself held captive. He's like screaming at them for whatever reason, more plot armor, whatever. Um, and so they go in and they try to have negotiations and it doesn't work. And ultimately, Zayden ends up killing 12 of the guards. And immediately after, you start to think like, oh, Violet should be battling with this, right? He just lost it.
Yeah.
He wielded. And we'll talk about how that whole magic system works later, but he wielded and he killed 12 people. Her immediate was, I still love you. And I'm like, okay, either you go into a villain arc
Yeah.
or you've just lost 100% of integrity of your character. What do you love about Zayden right now? What are like you're not battling with anything?
We're not concerned at all about any of his actions. Yeah, that bothered me too. And I was like, let's just embrace the venom.
Right?
Let's explore that a little. What does it mean?
Yeah. He lost it. He can't control it. What is this like me losing my boyfriend who I love? Is this like a part of me that I need to deal with? Am I losing feelings? Like nothing. You're just
Yeah.
unconditionally, and I get the unconditional love trope. I understand that. But also, you need to think logically about this when you're trying to save a world, I think. And you can't just immediately be like, I still love you. Like, that does not explore any of the themes that you started the book
Yeah.
exploring.
Or like, yeah, hey, I still love him, but like, we need to sit down and figure out what's going. Like, we have to have a fucking conversation that does not involve complimenting each other in any way, shape, or form, or professing your love. But like, sit down and be like, where are we?
Right.
What is happening? What do we do? Like, I still love you, but also, you just murdered 12 people who probably didn't deserve to die in this moment in time, and that's concerning.
And the more that I talk about it, the more that I'm like, maybe she could have gotten away with an 800-page book if she did it right. Like, I think there's
Yeah.
substance.
Like, I don't get me wrong, I think like the story itself, like there's so much potential in like what could have happened, where we could go, but she just doesn't have the characters to back it up.
Yeah. And every time that they say that I love each other and like I love her, or like there's this really bad situation. I think Violet at one point had just gotten her kneecap really messed up because Taryn almost had died, and she comes in and she's in pain and she like is trying to get off her dragon back at the war camp, and all of this stuff, and everything's happening, everything's terrible, blah blah blah. She sees Zayden. God, he looks so good. He does something to my body that I've never felt before. We're 3 books into this relationship.
Like, get over it.
There's stuff that's happening, and the only nice thing that you can say about your boyfriend is that he looks so good and that he turns you on. Like, that is one night stand territory. That is not love of my life territory.
Yeah, or like tender loving moments even. Like, have him look after her a little bit after because like there's that moment when Andarna breaks their bond and it's Brennan's the one who's there the whole time sitting down and reading, and I don't know where the fuck Zayden was for that in the bathroom. Like, I don't know.
Taking a shit.
Like, he just wasn't there. And I was like, why don't we have some moments together? You're on the island, go for a walk on the beach, have a little chat.
They're always mad at each other. Like, Violet disobeys. He's angry with her. And then it's like, she stands up to them and he's like, I fucking love you so much. Like, for what? You like, Violet has this really non-hero arc, and because she's so one-dimensional, she hasn't really given us much to love about her.
Yeah.
And so Zayden loves her for reasons that are unbeknownst to us.
Yeah.
And she to Zayden, they don't like each other.
No.
And
like, they can't be in a room together that doesn't involve sex by
No.
themselves. Like, you should be able to sit down with your partner and read a book and not crawl them like a tree.
I know. And there was one point where I can't remember if they were having sex at this point, because the first half of this book they couldn't have sex because he couldn't trust himself to stay in control. So there was like 6 just like different makeout scenes.
Yeah.
That lasted forever, and I'm like,
I skipped a whole chapter. I skipped 2 full chapters that were just smut, and I was like, I don't.
But
have
it
patience
wasn't
for this.
like, it wasn't full smut. It was just them making out because they couldn't have sex. It was so weird.
And I knew them well enough too, where I was like, I can skip this whole chapter and they're not gonna say anything
Anything
important.
New. No, anything new. God, you're so beautiful. And at one point Violet was like, this is our relationship. Is it toxic? Yeah, but it's us. And I was like, should we be glorifying that right now? Because yes, it's toxic. They don't know how to communicate. They are only lusty for each other.
Yeah.
And like, they are in a toxic relationship. They
should not be. Yeah.
No, they shouldn't be this powerful and then just like destined to be together and do anything for each other, but also still try to prioritize the rest of the world and like only have lust for each other. That's it.
Yeah, because like,
I don't believe it.
If they actually had a conversation at any point in this book.
I don't think
like, I don't know if they sat down and talked.
That they weren't mad at each other, or like, yeah.
Where sex wasn't involved or making out or something. Like, I don't think there was any point where they're like, what's our plan? Because Violet's just fucking making this shit up as she goes, apparently.
I know.
And then, like, the poisoning thing, you didn't tell Zayn about that a little bit?
Right. And I saw a video where they were like, this is amazing. They're so in tune with each other and they totally know what's going on with each other. I'm like, no, they don't.
No, like,
not even. I didn't feel that at all.
I feel like they're just willing to put up with whatever the other one does and be like, yeah, sure, I'll say yes. Which, like, again, if you have a conversation and set that as your relationship where you're like, you do you, I'll do me.
Right.
You need an alibi? I'm here for you, babe.
Yeah.
Go for it. Don't care.
They're always on opposite ends of what each other needs, and then if one of them does something terrible, they're like, I'll just support you. I'm like, ew.
Talk about it.
Yeah,
tell them you're going to do something super shitty and then be like, just roll with it. And then that's totally fine.
There was actually one point in the book where it actually felt like they were having a real conversation, and I had to highlight it because it was literally the only time that I had felt as though that they were having a conversation that like made any sort of impact on it. I'll have to find it.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like right here. Okay, so it was on page 476, so we're like 63% of the way. And so Zayden says, okay, so Violet is having a really hard time at this point because she's like, I don't feel like I'm cut out for this. I can't do this. I'm not strong enough for this or whatever. Which, like, finally a good moment, right?
Yeah.
And they're talking to each other in each other's minds, and she ends up ultimately saying, like, Taryn chose poorly. He shouldn't have chose me. I wasn't worthy of this. And Zayden basically says, say that to him when he's awake and see how that goes for you, which I think is a good line. And he goes, I've seen the moments you don't just rise to the occasion, you own it. Deverelli, Unbriel, you poisoned the entire triumvirate of Hedotus, for fuck's sakes. Imagine who you'll become when you finally learn to not just embrace that confidence, but live it. And she goes, you? And he goes, better than me. You have to be. You promised to help me protect Tyrendor, remember? And she goes, I remember. I meant it. I'll stand by your side. So, like, there's this moment where he actually keeps her accountable for something and doesn't just let her like brood and all of those things. I'm like, there's a moment that you're making each other better, but that's the only moment. And
Yeah.
when you have, and both of us were kind of hoping that Xaden wasn't going to be endgame for her.
Yeah, I was hoping for a Throne of Glass situation.
Yeah, but like you have 5 books in this series. They got together in the first book. And now we're just going to continue to have the same relationship over and over again for the next 2 books.
I
Ooh,
need more.
I know. It's going to get boring. It is getting boring.
Because, like, I think another book series that I DNF'd, which does a really similar thing, is From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that one.
I hate that series. I fucking hate Poppy. Poppy's worse than Violet, in my opinion.
Oh, no.
But that's another one that does the same kind of thing where, like, it should have been a trilogy. It got pushed out to, like, 5 or 6 books. I can't even remember how long it is. And you can tell. Oh, yeah. And I don't think anyone's disputing the fact that that was just a money grab to
They're
get
all
for
money
cash.
grabs.
There are very few stories, especially in the romance world, that need to go past a trilogy. I will die on
Duologies
that
and
hill.
trilogies, that's where it's at.
Yeah,
Especially in romantasy.
I love a duology.
Yeah.
Love. If you're doing high fantasy, yeah, you need more books. But even then, like most high fantasy series have, you move cast members as you go.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
different problem.
Yeah.
But like, relationships are boring, and they should be boring. Like you
Yes.
should get to a point where like you had that strife, you had the conflict, you figured your shit out, you got to a nice equilibrium, happy, stable, boring.
Yeah.
But I'm not here for your boring relationship.
No.
I want chaos and I want fighting and I want conflict and I want you to have to reevaluate your whole life and your understanding of the world.
And talk about it and have
Yeah.
moments with each other. Make me believe that there is this like undoubtable love between the two of you, that you like,
Yeah.
that you fight, that you break up, that whatever, right? Their character arc, I can't believe about this is the last thing I'll say about the relationship before we move on to plot and world building, but their relationship could use a little bit more inspiration from After.
Yes.
Right?
Because like at least that relationship, like you knew what you were getting out of it. It got like they break up.
They break up, they fight, they like, you know, that
It's also toxic.
it's toxic.
Everyone knows it's toxic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's my thing with this. It's like either get them to a spot where their relationship is boring and they've hit equilibrium, or break them up and add some other form of strife. Because right now I'm getting the same thing over and over again, and it's fucking boring. And it's not boring in a happy way. It's boring in a they're just gonna argue. They're gonna have sex.
Yeah.
They're not gonna talk for 3 months. It's fine.
Yeah.
But like,
Like, think
something
about
else.
like Vin and Elend in Mistborn, where they get together pretty early, but then afterwards it's like they're separated and they have to like miss each other, and then they have to try and figure out what the other wants, and they're kind of in tune with each other, and like they have to come back and they have to strategize and update each other and scheme and plan. Like, do that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyways, we need to get off this relationship thing. I don't believe that
They shouldn't be endgame. I would like a Throne of Glass situation to occur, and I'm not going to say what that is because I don't want to spoil Throne of Glass for anyone because it's an exceptional series.
Throne of Glass is good, though.
But we need a Throne of Glass situation.
Throne of Glass is my favorite romantasy series of all time.
I don't know if I can say that, but I haven't thought about romantasy in a while, so.
Okay, we didn't talk about any other relationships, but I don't think
There aren't any other relationships.
Yeah.
Let's be real.
Just the ones that like popped up randomly, and we
I'm
would
here
need,
for
we
my
would
boy
need a
Riddick.
whole other episode on the other relationships.
I'm here for my slutty man Riddick.
Yeah.
He's living the best life.
The only note there, I have 2 notes on plot. But the biggest thing, and we've talked about this already, is that there was too much plot armor.
Again, like rules. You need rules in your world that are absolutes that cannot be changed, that keep your story in some form of box so that there's problems.
My biggest example, this is when I lost it. This is when I started to lose my mind and get really angry. Was they start going off continent. And the big magic piece when they go off continent is that they don't have their magic. They don't have their bonds to their dragons. Xaden can no longer wield his shadows. Violet can't wield lightning. Xaden can't, he's like no longer able to channel his venom. So they get off continent and Xaden feels a sense of peace. And this is actually, oh my gosh, we're going back to the relationship thing again. There was a point in this chapter 2 where Violet was like, Xaden's smiling. I've never seen that before. And I was like, your boyfriend smiled and winked at you for the first time in 2.5 books, and you can't fathom who he is? Break up. If
Call
you
it
are
a day.
public service announcement, if you are in a relationship with someone for any more than 2 weeks and you've never seen him smile at you,
Call it.
call it. It's done. So anyways, so he's at like peace, and they finally were able to have sex and all of these things, and it was very clear that like these two finally needed to have sex. So she was like, okay, I'll get them off continent. They have no magic off continent, but for some reason, I think Violet was still able to talk to Taryn.
Yeah, that never got really expanded on. We don't know why that happened.
So like, but again, like, okay, we need to get them off continent. We need them to be able to have sex. No magic, but I need Violet to still be able to talk to Taryn. So you know what? For whatever reason, Violet can still talk to Taryn. It's just because she's powerful, whatever. Then we go to somewhere else that's also off continent, and now it's like, okay, well, now we need Xaden to channel magic in some way, but we're still off continent. How am I going to do this? Well, you know what? There's a life force somewhere, and Xaden is going to be able to wield that and take it so that he can be Venom, and now we have this other problem. So now we're off continent, there's no magic, but if there's a life force, then Xaden can channel that for his Venom powers, but that's it. And then, like, there's just it every single time we moved on, it was like, I need this to happen, so I'm gonna change the rules because of this.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, even if she does twist it so her weird and Darna is the embodiment of magic and that's why she could still talk to her dragons or whatever, explain it. Like, I'm sorry, just explicitly explain it at some point. Like,
Yeah,
don't just like breadcrumb me to death.
and it's okay every once in a while. Like,
Yeah.
you can put some plot armor, like whatever, but literally sit down and take some time to problem solve. Like, okay, I have this issue. They're off continent. I really, what's more important here? Them having sex or Xaden killing these people? Could I do it somewhere else? Maybe we go back into continent and we do this so that, like, then these problems arise or something. Like, problem solve in a way that you don't have to just break all the rules that you create all the time. And that, let's just do plot and world building together. That was where she really struggled with this world building, because she didn't understand that once she created rules,
You need to keep them.
you need to keep them because it removes the integrity of the story. And now we're talking about your characters have no integrity, your world building has no integrity, your story completely falls apart.
Yeah, and then there's no stakes, and then I don't care. Like, it doesn't impact me that, okay, well, you couldn't do magic off continent, but now you can, so
And
whatever.
Darna leaves at the end, and like Violet basically blacks out, and she's like so devastated that and Darna has broken this bond, and then she comes back.
And reestablishes it.
Like, wait, like there's no stakes, there's no finality to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one came up. The magic just in general feels really underdeveloped and very confused by the magic system. And I feel like usually I'm less confused as we go on, but I'm more confused now because I really don't understand how this thing works.
Yeah, and you can have a bit of a soft magic system. Like, one of the most famous soft magic systems that exists is Lord of the Rings, and that's incredible. But Lord of the Rings does something that what she hasn't been able to do is just make it simple. You have an all powerful ring. Is that ring explained on how it works? No. Nobody, like, whatever. It's just an all powerful ring. But that ring has rules, and you stick to the rules, and you don't let just like,
Yeah, you can have a super basic magic system. You need to have rules to govern it. It doesn't matter if they're stupid or like basic rules. Like, it can't do this. Because like, I also don't know what sets your maximum for magical power. At what point do you get exhausted? Where is that determined? How do we measure it? Who cares?
yeah, we don't know. And if you want to just say like, if you want to have the most simple, this is where magic exists and this is where magic doesn't exist, just keep to it, because your character should be focused on the romance and the like the world ending situation. It shouldn't be convoluted with all of these little intricate rules that you don't really have any um absoluteness to. You don't have any stubbornness to, like you need to. It should be focused on the simple things that makes this book really good, makes people enjoy it, and then like stick to it and actually do some problem solving.
Yeah, it make things difficult, make it hard, make some of their things inachievable. Like a city burns to the ground because the thing that you're trying to do isn't possible.
Yeah.
It's outside the rules of your magic system. You
Yeah.
tried to break them, it didn't work.
Instead of just like how many times did Violet just like fly into a situation that she wanted to save and not save it? Like she's treated as this hero who's like, I'm gonna go save this city, I'm gonna go do this, and then she never does it, and then it burns down anyways, and like, I don't know, that's more plot armor that you just like, oh, I needed the city to burn down and I needed Violet to seem like a hero again, but she's not. She continues to just disobey and not succeed at any of it. Like, how am I supposed to cheer for her? Like, it's not making me captivated to the story.
Yeah, like your heroes can fail.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they should.
Mm-hmm.
And they should have to face the consequences of that failure.
Yeah.
And maybe the consequences of that failure aren't your like structured military whatever, like doesn't have to be the general with those consequences. It could be the emotional consequences of that.
Yeah.
It could be that like her friends start to lose faith in her abilities and she has to like understand that she has to, like, she can't always be perfect, like literally anything.
Yeah, literally anything. But to be fair, we need to talk about this last thing. Sense of frickin' urgency, man.
Holy fuck. The timeline on this was horrible. I didn't know what day it was, where we were, why. Like, you've got 6 months, which, by the way,
and wasted
did not
like
get
2 of them just arguing and not doing anything.
Yeah. Also, like, I forgot about the 6-month timeline because that's a really minor piece of information from the previous book. You could have re-explained that when you introduced the 6 months again and be like, we have 6 months because that's as long as the ward thing's gonna last after we did this thing in the last book. Like, I just need a little explanation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, like, they were pissing away weeks at a time.
Yeah. Atos was just sending them on random expeditions, being like, I don't care if the world burns down, which is why, if you're going to do that, because yes, that is the way society works. Like, let's just look at our political climate right now. Like, politicians spend a lot of time in just a burning system doing absolutely nothing. Like, I'm not saying that this is not a realistic political structure. It very much is.
Yeah.
But in that case, I'm not cheering for them. I'm like, take Violet, and she's like, okay, I'm gonna go do stuff on my own, but she's like kind of doing it and kind of not. She's also like, okay, well, I'll still just go to class every day and do this, and then everybody else is like, let's go to class all day and learn how to do, like,
them still going to class is kind of infuriating.
I know.
Don't get me wrong, I love Academy books, and I love, like, most of my Why Choose stuff. Like, there's a whole wall of Academy books behind me.
Yeah. But the world is ending, and you are too young, and you have to still go to class, and you're second year, and so you can't do this.
Right? Like, if you can't impact the big events via your academy, like, if the political atmosphere in your academy is not what's controlling the world, get out of the fucking academy now.
Before page 400, please.
Yeah.
Please.
And you can only...
Because they eventually did it. They waited until page, like, 400 or 500 to do it.
Yeah, like, you need to get out of here sooner. Like, you need to push your plot along. You need to keep things interesting. And, like, they kept leaving, and then they could come back. And they're like, and then for 3 weeks I sat through math class. And I was like...
And I got in trouble, and I got accused of treason. And, like, there was... between page, like, 100 to maybe 300 or 400, there were 3 or 4 scenes where I was like, didn't this already happen? Like, am I rereading something? Because it was just like, let's go to this section, and let's come back and get in trouble, and let's go to this place, and then come back and get in trouble, and let's go to this place, and come back and get in trouble, like, over and over again. It's
also, I think, even though some of this is, like, smut YA, like, they're young in these. They're, like, 18, 19, you're still at school, you're still kind of, like, bound by those rules. These people are in, like, their mid-20s.
Yeah, because like, her and Halden dated back when Violet like was 18, so do the math. Like, you're at least 23 at this point.
Yeah. So like I want you to be like, no, I'm almost or close to or absolutely a fully fledged adult. Like,
I was a manager by the age of 23. Like,
yeah,
let's, like, you can do stuff.
you can go and make your own decisions, break the rules, absolutely. Keep breaking them. Don't come back. Go rogue. Take you and your squad and your dragons and fuck off. And don't even get me started on the bajillion-year-old dragons that just let these children dictate their lives. Don't I? Why are the people in charge? Why aren't the dragons in charge? Why did the dragons just let this happen?
Mhm.
That was never explained well enough for me. I
None
don't
of it
think
was.
I was very confused as to
Yeah.
why the dragons were like,
Yeah.
this walking child can just tell me to do this and I'll do it.
But let's throw our bone. That ending was good. It
Yes.
made me intrigued. Like, they go to this temple. Well, they find out first that Theoprene, the the Venom counterpart of her mother. I'm so sorry. This was like 1 a.m.
It was also reading it at 3.5 speed, so I don't know how any of these names supposed to
Yeah,
sound.
she's her mother's counterpart. We find out that she's actually a storm wielder, which is why she's like not really able to counterpart, or like she's not able to fight her with the lightning, and her whole plan falls apart. And we have basically chaos ensuing. We've got wyverns everywhere. There's like a huge army, and they make it to the temple and they start defending the temple, which you're gonna have to help explain this to me. The goddess or the priestess
Priestess.
of Dune comes up, and she gives Violet this dagger to help kill
No.
you. Yeah, you can go.
No,
You
okay,
go.
okay. Again, it's 1 a.m. in the morning at this point when I'm listening to this, and I was on the couch looking like I wanted to die.
Yeah.
But from my understanding, as they go, they protect the temple, they stop them from destroying it or whatever, and the priestesses are like, wow, thanks. And then they
Yeah.
get chewed out for that instead of protecting the walls where they were supposed to be because she was defying orders yet
Right.
again.
Yeah. Okay.
And then Arik, where the fuck,
Arik. Yeah. I think.
he sends a note and a wrapped thing to Violet
Yes.
saying that like when you need this you'll know. And then I don't no one explains where he got that from or how he knows. They're
Okay.
like maybe he's a precog and that's his signet or whatever.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then she opens it and it's this like
Which
stone knife.
to me, if he's a precog, it's kind of plot armor. But continue.
Or rules.
Yeah. Well, we
Rules.
know that I've lost faith in that.
How you get around precogs and not make them overpowered is you make it so that there's probabilities of what they see happening, or there's like 6 different choices and you need to figure out which
or
one.
they're basically like psychotic because of the amount of options they see, and
Or
they go crazy or something like that. Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, you can't just have a precog that's like, and that's the path. That's not how precogs can work in a story and still have a story.
You're making too many powerful characters.
Yeah. Anyway, he might be a precog. So then she gets this weird knife that's stone, and Venom are apparently not like you can't kill them unless you starve them.
Yeah.
It's the only way they can die. But for whatever reason, this knife that the priestesses gave this dude can kill her.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I think. I hope that's what that happened. Someone's gonna read me out in the comments. It's fine. I don't care enough.
Right. And then Zayden ends up channeling in his last
and his
little
full
bit
entirety of
to save, and like Violet becomes the only thing that's holding him to like sanity at this point, and not
humanity
going
or whatever.
full Venom, which I like.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I liked them as a couple, like if I had felt any inkling of this battle between save the world and you're the only person holding me to like sanity, or I'm going evil and you're the only person keeping me good, if I felt any of that throughout the book, I would have liked this more. But this is like just separating that. This is a good scene. And she says like I love you, and he hears it, and it's the only thing holding up onto humanity. And then Mira almost gets like killed. This happens beforehand, which Mira was done so dirty in this book, but whatever. And that's what ends up getting them in this situation. And then Violet, at the end of all of this, Violet wakes up.
Yeah, on the ground in the courtyard.
Wait, no, because before this, Zayden finds out that Bruin, his sage, the one who turned him
Barrowin or whatever.
Yeah. There's another one. There's another Venom who is Zayden's brother.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's like brother under the sage.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And there is, there's another one, and Xaden sees who it is, but us as the audience don't know who it is. And he says, I never thought that you would turn. I never thought it would be you. Uh, and then we go to Violet waking up, and she has no memory of the last 12 hours. She's been missing. She has a ring on her finger. She's married to Xaden. She doesn't know where he is.
Yeah.
And she has no memory. Brennan's waking her up.
Yeah. And she's a duchess now.
Yeah. There's a couple of options for who this brother could be. I'm interested. I'll probably read it because I'm just, anyways. You all know how I feel. There's a couple of options. Bodhi is a good option because in one of those scenes he was seen retching, but I think it was because his dragon was hurt or something. Bodhi's a good option, but I also feel like it's too obvious. Like if you see him retching and then right after Xaden's like, I never thought it would be you who would change. I'm like,
because if we know anything about Yaros, it's the fact that she's just gonna throw it at you with zero foreshadowing and just be like, look at my twist.
And I think that was just like a mislead.
Yeah.
I think it's Brennan.
I think it's Brennan too. I hope it's Brennan.
Yeah.
Because Brennan knows what's up.
And
or Riddick. I would take Riddick too.
Ooh,
Ven and Riddick would be fun.
That would be fun. But I think it's Brennan, because Xaden was like, because if anybody is going to do it to save Violet, I think Brennan would be a good option. Riddick maybe too. Actually, I never thought about that. But when Violet woke up and she had lost all of her memories, Brennan is the one who's there.
Yep.
And he's the one who's leading her. So he's like, do you know where he is? Do you know where Xaden is? Do you what's going on? Or do you remember anything? What do you remember? There's all of these things that he's doing. And he's also, I read this morning, and he's also the one who was like, look at your finger. Look, there's a ring on your finger. What happened? Do you know where he is? Do you know where Xaden is? So that makes me feel suspicious of Brennan.
That's true. Also, how often do you look at someone's hands and notice that they have rings on? Unless that thing is a honker of an emerald.
Yeah. Did she do any foreshadowing of Brennan doing it in the first couple books? No, absolutely not. There's nothing, there's no Easter eggs.
Yeah, there's no indication here.
But that was what made me think Brennan.
Yeah. I'm gonna be so annoyed if the fourth book is her being like, I need to find out what I made myself forget. Because I'm sorry, if I woke up tomorrow and today didn't exist in my memory and I had a note from myself that was definitely me being like, don't worry about it, I would not worry about it. I'd be like, cool, if there's one human being in this world I could trust to have my best interests at heart, it's me.
True.
So fuck it. Okay. Yeah. I won't worry about it.
Yeah.
I'll just figure it out when I'm supposed to.
Yeah, I don't love the idea of there being another filler book dedicated to
a question.
Violet getting her memories back or Violet finding Xaden.
I want some movement on this goddamn plot.
I kind of want to know what our goal of what are we trying to accomplish at this point, because to me it really just seems like we're just going in the direction of Violet and Xaden burning down the world for each other, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that being the direction, but there's so many characters with that they've decided that Violet and Xaden care about that I don't think that she can go that way anymore. So what are we trying to accomplish? Because I don't feel that either of these characters actually care about the well-being of the world.
No, and again, it's okay, Venom are bad, get rid of Venom. But that clearly hasn't worked in the past. Every route you've looked at to get rid of them doesn't exist or doesn't work or won't help you.
And at this point, the Venom are my favorite part of the book. So
yeah, and they're the part I'm most interested about now.
I kind of want them to take over the world.
How does their magic work?
Everyone should be Venom.
Yeah, how do how do they work? What do they do? Why are they doing it? There's clearly something going on with them that we haven't even remotely touched yet. Yeah. There's a whole society, culture, whatever we haven't touched. We've just painted them as the bad guy and gone with that. And this is why it should be YA, because you can do that in YA. You can be like, these are the bad guys. We are going to get rid of them. We are not going to ask questions. And that's totally fine.
Yeah.
But this isn't a YA book. Because you riddled it with smut and then tried to build an entire universe around it. So now I'm like, well, you need to explain to me why the Venom are bad. I need to know more about them. What's going on? What are they doing? How is it happening? You can't just call them bad and call it a day.
No.
You've
No.
got to explain it more.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I'm expecting. And this book just really wasn't for me.
What I will say, yeah, and I think that's like the biggest thing. Like I was gonna try and be a lot more positive today because I recognize that this book is not for me. But what I do think comes out of it for me that is good. Uh, I love to complain. One of my favorite things in the world
Yeah.
is reading or watching something that pisses me off to no end and just like like I love to complain. I don't know if you've ever seen like the Seinfeld quote where he's like, "No, my entire career was based on me complaining. Like that's what I love to do. I'm gonna go to an all inclusive in Mexico and I'm gonna complain. That's my joy. That is part of it for me. I like to complain about stuff like this, and so it to an extent did give me what it wanted. I just there are some things that I wish that she could have executed better because I do really like the concept of what she's trying to do.
Yeah. And like, it's not new or wow. It's not new or novel or anything, but she had a fun twist on it. She had a cool
Yeah.
idea. And I was like, let's run with it because in this, like, this was an interesting attempt at blending the YA tropes with the high
Mm-hmm.
fantasy tropes. But I just don't think she has the experience as an author yet
Yeah.
to do it.
Exactly.
Like, she should have written some YA, she should have written some high fantasy, and then she could have.
Yeah. We did want to be a little bit solutions oriented, so I have not read enough romance fantasy to be able to help out with recommendations, but Daria did put together some recommendations that would be really good options for if you liked Fourth Wing or if you felt similar to us where you felt that there was a lot of things missing in it. Daria's got some recommendations for you.
Yeah. So I did a couple different options here. Because again, there's not a lot of like Dragon Rider War College stuff. You can find some on Reddit. I don't think any of them are quite at the caliber of Fourth Wing as far as like what that is.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as war colleges go, I have a YA series that I really enjoyed, which was An Ember in the Ashes by Saba Tahir. Great series. Basically, like the main character goes into a war college. I don't think there's dragons. I can't remember specifics on this one. I just remember really enjoying this story and the concept of this one, where her brother's been kidnapped or taken prisoner, and she needs to go into this war college because the rebels are like, well, if you help us get information, we'll help you get your brother.
Cool.
So she infiltrates the high up son of the general, ends up being like her romantic interest, but he's also like never questioned his life or his society before.
Ooh.
Which is the fun part where you have people on opposite ends of a conflict who need to like fall in love and meet in the middle or like push
Right.
pull.
Yeah.
Great time. YA, not super smutty at all, I don't think. Very enjoyable series. Not YA, but high fantasy is Furies of Calderon or the aka the Codex Illyria series by Jim Butcher. You start following this kid. He's like in the first book like a child, 15 at most, and he ends up going to a like magic university. They have a very structured like warlike society. They're always fighting. Similar war college vibes, but a high fantasy series that has like a lot of politics, a lot of world building, and it's so cool.
Cool.
So cool. Dragon Riders, Aragon. This is the pinnacle of Dragon
Aragon.
Riders.
Aragon.
If you want Dragon Riders and a little bit of high fantasy done well, Aragon.
Yeah.
It's got problems. It was written by a 17-year-old. But it's still got more plot that
Mhm.
makes cohesive sense and rules.
And rules.
Really good rules compared to
brother.
this.
Oh, brother.
Um, love Aragon. It's the book that got me back into reading when I had fallen off as a
Yeah.
kid.
Mhm.
Phenomenal. I know less about this one. I have the books here and I've read the first couple, but I don't remember them specifically. But His Majesty's Dragon by Naomi Novak is a great high fantasy series too. Yeah, I've got a couple of them spread out in the fantasy section. Also, great series. Dragon Riders, high fantasy, great world building, exceptional series. There's more.
There's more.
There's more in the world. I highly recommend those ones to give a shot if you want more YA, more high fantasy. Again, I don't think anyone blends those two really well to the point I'd recommend them.
Right.
But if you want to live in one of those worlds, there's some really good books.
Yeah. Well, and I think what Fourth Wing has done and ACOTAR, like Sarah J. Maas has done this as well, is it's brought people back into reading.
Yeah.
Who haven't read in a long time. And what brought me back in after falling off when I was younger, I reread the Mortal Instruments series and like went through all of those, and then I went into Throne of Glass and ACOTAR, and that's what, like, those were really good introductions for me. They were easy to follow, they were fun, they were smutty, they were drama filled. Like, it was almost like a TV series and a book, and those are really, really good when you're trying to get back into reading. And I would encourage you all to push yourselves a little bit to get into, like, what are some of these plots that I really, really like, what are the types of characters that I want to explore, and that kind of thing, because the recommendations that Daria gave you are good for that.
Yeah, and like anything that gets people reading, I'm all for. I own all 3 of these books, and I will be buying the rest of them, and I will be reading the rest of them because I just love books and I love reading, but I also love looking at these things and thinking like, cool, you did it. Could have been better.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it doesn't have to be perfect.
and the more that you read, the more that you're gonna do that. The more
Yeah.
criticisms that you're gonna have, and the more you're gonna enjoy really picking apart books about what you like and what you don't like, because there are exceptional books and then there are less than exceptional books. And something that's mass produced like this, like, things that are for the masses aren't necessarily good. Like, Nickelback is a prime example of that, right? It is for the masses. Everybody likes it for a reason. We all know why people like it. Same thing with Fourth Wing. Same thing with ACOTAR. Like,
Yeah.
we know why everybody likes it. But there really is more out there. There's more in-depth stories that you will fall in love with characters and that will destroy you. And if you read any of the ones that Daria recommended, let us know and maybe I'll pick up one of them at some point.
You would really like Codex Lyria.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very good series. I unfortunately don't own it, but I've been meaning to pick it up.
Okay.
But yeah, and if you want recommendations or there's something in Fourth Wing where you're like, I really liked this concept and I want more of it, let us know. I can probably find you a decent recommendation for that.
Totally. All right. Well, that was not as positive as I was thinking that it was going to be, but
we were trying really hard not to get ourselves canceled with this, and there's so many feelings that I couldn't.
Listen, I've seen a lot of hyper positivity on the book, and I get it. Don't get me wrong at all, but I think that the problems need to be talked about.
Like, I love things that I know people hate. I got every single Zodiac Academy book behind me, and I know those suck.
What
I love them.
What I am really impressed about is that we agreed on this one.
Yeah.
Because we don't agree on a lot of books.
Not often.
Yeah. Anyways. Thank you for joining us. We're happy to be back. Follow us, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. We're on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. Comment, like, subscribe. It helps us always a lot. We love to have you here. We'll read all of your comments. We'll try to respond to all of them. We appreciate you all.
Bye.
Bye.